Hello, I'm Visnus, and I'd like to talk to you about my 3.25 Settlers of Kalgur simplified Syndicate setup. Now, I say simple, but keep in mind it's Syndicate. We're gonna have to go over a few details. But I can show you my board here, how, unlike previously, where I had connected all members to each other, I have a much simpler connection scheme here, where my gravicius, my chimaera are connected to as many people who are lieutenants, and I specifically ignore captains, and ideally I will break these connections with fortification, but it's a minor deal. The reason I have changed the way that I set up my syndicate is because I've started using scarabs, so I'm in a trade league environment, and I'm playing with Betrayal scarabs of intelligence. These grant 150% increased intelligence from immortal syndicate targets in the encountered area. I also play with Betrayal scarabs of reinforcements. It helps so that there are more people during the encounters. The reason I have changed my setup and why my lines specifically do not connect to the other captains between Hillock and Ashling is because the interrogation options for these, instead of being something nice, so they have 16 intelligence normally when you interrogate them, so it goes to 40. There's a bug currently where if you interrogate and it says 40 intelligence, you're only going to be getting 8 instead. I've set up my board specifically to isolate these people away from my encounters so they don't show up. We can go over all the different options, the connections, how it should look, and how you should go through the syndicate encounters inside the maps yourself. Oop. So we start here. I know, the boards, the red lines, the X's, it's too much. But let's try to break it down, make it as simple as possible. So, we're going to be using what is called a 2-2-5-5 method. It's very simple. There are 2 members in transportation, 2 members in fortification, 5 members in research, and 5 members in intervention. The reason this is important is so that anytime you do some action with your transportation or your fortification members, such as imprisoning Guff, imprisoning Chimaera, running the transportation safe houses, whatever have you, these members will immediately kick back into their respective safe houses, and you don't have to worry about it. They remain in isolation within these areas. Now, what are the connections and why am I doing it? So, as I spoke, when you interrogate leaders using a Betrayal Scarab of Intelligence, it has a reduced effect. They go down to 8 intelligence instead of 40. This is unacceptable. Ideally, they fix this bug because having leaders is quite nice, but it exists, so this is what you do. My Chimaera here, as you can see, I want him connected to every single lieutenant in the research and the intervention encounter. I do not want them connected to my intervention leader. I do not want them connected to my research leader. I do not want them connected to the fortifications. The reason I don't want the fortification connections is, yes, it's nice when you run the fortifications to have these people show up and rank them up, but it's really detrimental when it goes the other way around. When you run a transportation and these people show up and you can't really be interrogating them and they don't give much intelligence, you just don't want it. Keep the connections very simple. You want your Chimaera, you want your gravicius to connect to all of these people over here. You can see this is like the Chimaera lines and how they would look. These are the gravicius lines and how they would look. It's roughly what my in-game board looks like. And then we can go further and talk about the fortification thing and why it's important to have these guys kind of isolate off from themselves. So something you can do and why you have the 2 members in fortification is when you enter a map, you will rush around. You will try to find your fortification or your transportation. So 50-50 of which one shows up. Guff being at 1 star, because we're using the special Betrayal Scarab of Intelligence, even at 1 star, his imprisonment gives 7 intelligence. As long as we find him as the first encounter in a map, when we do the intervention and the research, it'll go from 7 to 14. Your bar will go from 90 to 104. Your fortification will fill. We talked about how there's a 50-50 chance for fortification or transportation to show up. If your fortification is full, if it is ready, if the safe house is 100% intelligence, it cannot show up. This will result in you getting more and more transportations as opposed to fortifications. And then we can go boop, 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 to the various map options. So, when you talk to members in the Syndicate encounters inside your maps, they give you a bunch of different options. We can go over like the good ones, the bad ones, and the ones that are highly situational, aka the ugly ones. We can start with the good ones. So you can see here, there's an option called bargain. What bargain is if there is only a single member in an encounter, whether the encounter started with one member or you have executed or released other members down to one member, you will gain something called a bargain some number of the time. A bargain is effectively them begging for their lives. They're trying to give you something. You can get maps, you can get scarabs, you can get currency items, you can get intelligence for the encounter you're doing, you can get veiled items. These are all pretty good. They're great. Just click them. They're free items. The other options that are almost always going to be correct to be clicking are things like execute plus rank. Once again, you need your people to get up to rank 3. You need your transportation people to be rank 3 for rewards. You need all the other people to be rank 3 to feed intelligence to your transportation more easily. Things like interrogating for transportation intelligence is good. I would not recommend interrogating for other safe houses. You don't want them to be full. You're using them just as a farm. And we can talk about the bad options. These are options that I would highly recommend you never touch. There can be some situations when you're initially setting up your board where they may be useful, but for the most part, these are options that you should adamantly avoid. Things like gaining research intelligence, gaining intervention intelligence. These are safe houses. Once again, you want them open, you want them available, you want them to be the way that you're gaining ranks so that they can be fed into transportation. You don't care about your research rewards, you don't care about your intervention rewards. If you want, you can set up a board that farms those instead, but that is not the objective that I have been going with. Things like removing a member from the Immortal Syndicate. Really early on, when you're still hunting for specific members, like if you want to do the gravicius farm and gravicius is not on your board, this is a good option because effectively there are always going to be 3 members of the syndicate sitting out at a time. So you do need to be removing people until you get the member you want. But once you have all your members, once everyone's in their correct places, you never want to click this option. It replaces them with a random member and it kills all the links that they currently have. It's a bad thing. Interrogating for intelligence in not transportation and not fortification. Once again, your research and your intervention, you want to leave them open. Do not add intelligence to them. Things that swap the leadership role. This can happen when 2 members, including a leader, a captain, within an encounter show up together. It'll be like, hey boss, I want to swap with that person. I could be the new captain. You don't want to do this. Once again, we've isolated the captains away. They are not part of the connections. You don't want to disrupt this. Do not click these options. Things that are reduce all rank, give all rank to someone else. Once again, their ranks are going to be more than sufficient just through the +1 rank and the Atlas passives. You don't need to be doing this. Don't click any of these options. They're very bad. I couldn't get a screen grab of one, but there's another option that says +1 all ranks of one safe house, -1 all ranks of another safe house. So it'll say like +1 all intervention members, -1 all research members. Don't click this option. You don't want to do it. It's not necessary. It's not helpful. It'll just give you a bad time. Please, 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 please. The love that is all is good. Do not click remove all rivalries. You will destroy your board. Very early on, when you are first setting up your board, this can be okay as a way to wipe your board. You could also run a Katarina. The problem with running a Katarina is that it changes and jumbles all the members. So like using this, if you are like, okay, I want to set up a gravicius farm, I want to set up a specific member farm, using this initially can be okay. Past that point, never click this button. Now we can talk about the ugly and the situational options. So as we said, bargain is an option that can be given to a member when they are the last remaining member in a safe house. We have to create all of these lines, right? So if we go back here, we have to create, Chimeria has to connect to all of these people, Gravicius has to connect to all these people. How are we going to do this? Well, there's like a couple ways you can do it. You can painstakingly move these people around to all the different safe houses and build connections with that. I don't recommend that. It's slow, it's tedious, it's hard to do. What I instead recommend is, go back to the map options, leaving Gravicius and Chimeria, in this case, as my last members in every encounter while they build up connections. You can see here it says like Gravicius and Ashling become trusted, +10 research intelligence. This is just an option that appears because Gravicius is the last standing member in an encounter, and he's like, hey, I would like to build a connection with someone. It doesn't have to be someone that was in the encounter. He'll just pick a person at random. You need to do this to build trusted relations, and then you need to do this to build rival relations. It's the same deal, you just leave them last. You can see an option over here, it's a bargain once again. This is how I use this in the early league to build my connections. I didn't move them around. I just put the people where they needed to be. I set the 2-2-5-5 up, and then I just left the important members last. The reason this is in the ugly section and why it's a little weird is because you have other connections that can appear, right? You only want to be using this for your specific farming members. In this case, Chimeria and Gravicius are the members that I care about. If 2 other people show up in this option, if like someone else had been the last remaining member and they want to become trusted with Ashling, I don't want that. Something else that is important about this and why it's in the ugly section is you can see very specifically here, it says Gravicius and Ashling become trusted. Now, as I said, you want to build connections, but you want to build connections with leaders in mind. If you look at my board here, Ashling is a leader. So this is not an option I would want to be selecting because Ashling is one of the members that I want isolated away. Ashling follows under the category of a captain of research or intervention or a member of fortification. So it takes a little time, it takes a little reading, but it's important to make sure you know who's trying to connect to who. It sounds way more complicated than it is. I promise once you start doing it, it'll become very, very simplified. Like you only have to remember like 3 or 4 members' names and that's it. Everyone else, you just kind of click, it's good. Imprisoning captains. Once again, we spoke on the Betrayal Intelligence Scarab and how when it says plus 40 transportation intelligence here, it's actually only going to give 8. The reason this is in the ugly category is specifically for when you're trying to set up your transportation. Ideally, when you run the Safehouse, Gravicius is the rank 3, or is the leader, because when you finish the Safehouse, Gravicius will remain rank 3, and you can end up in situations where you can do back-to-back-to-back Safehouses as you do the transportation, and it brings a bunch of other people in, and you interrogate them, and then you get a release all option. I think my record during the league was I did 4 maps in a row where I got to do a transportation Safehouse. That was pretty nice. Getting 2 in a row isn't like uncommon, but don't expect it. Things that are other members becoming rivals with each other. So this says Riker and Hillock become rivals, plus 10 intervention intelligence. The reason this isn't necessarily just always bad is because when you're first setting up your board, you're going to have some connections from one member to another that aren't things that you want. The way that you break these connections is if you have trusted members, they need to become rivals. When they become rivals, they can then become neutral. So building rivalry early while you're still setting up your board is fine. It's one of the ways to like clean your board up. You then get an option later that says, you know, so-and-so become neutral. Reason the neutrality option is in the situational is, once again, any of the connections between random members like Riker and Hillock, Riker and Haku, whoever it may be, you want them to become neutral. That's fine. You want to break those connections. But anytime it's like Chimeria becomes neutral or Gravicius becomes neutral, and once again, this can go from another member back to them. This is Guff is the person you're talking to here, wants to become neutral with Chimeria. Don't allow this to happen. You need to maintain those connections. So once again, you got to read. It's not, as you do it more and more and more, it kind of becomes like second nature and it's not that bad of a problem. But when you're initially doing it, take the time to read the options and understand what is happening. Once again, you can see here, these are 2 random members. This is Giannis and Leo becoming neutral. This would be a good option, but once again, you just have to read when it says they're building like neutrality or rivalry with each other. And then you have the option over here that is Chimeria moves to intervention, Verici moves to transportation. You can get an option that happens where it swaps 2 members on your syndicate board with each other. Early on, when you're first moving people around, this can be a good option. Later on, don't click this option. It becomes bad once everyone's in their proper place. You will notice with a lot of these bargains that they say, you know, Gravicius and Ashling become trusted, plus 10 research intelligence. Riker and Hillock become rivals, plus 10 intervention intelligence. What's happening here is it's giving the intelligence of the native Safehouse for the second member. So it says Riker and Hillock become rivals, intervention intelligence. That means Hillock is in intervention. It will give you intervention intelligence. Same with the Ashling and research. When you're first setting up all these connections, it's perfectly fine. You'll have a bunch of safe houses at 90. You click one of these options, they go to 100. Don't sweat it. Just continue running Syndicate encounters in the map. Eventually, after a few maps, the encounter, the safe house, will go from 100 back down to 90, and you can go about your business. Do not run the safe houses. The only safe houses you're ever going to run with this specific strategy are the transportation safe houses. Do not run fortification, do not run research, do not run intervention. And once again, if none of these options appear, or if you're just like not quite sure what's going on, not sure what you should be doing, or if only bad options show up, you can release the member. There's a little button at the bottom of them that says release. All it says is you can go about your day, nothing happens, their ranks don't change, the intelligence doesn't change. It's a safe option. So that would be my recommendation. So we can go over here. So we look at here, right? This is like an intervention encounter. This is a transportation encounter. You go in the map, you begin the Syndicate encounters, a bunch of goons show up, you fight them. Sometimes it's one member, sometimes it's a lot of members. Ideally, it's a lot of members. That's the point of the rival connections. Here's kind of like a simplified flowchart, little order of interrogation, order of talking to people to try to help people out. If you are in an intervention or a research encounter, you will first hover, so like flip your mouse over all of the characters. It shows you their number of stars. So you'll hover them all, see if anyone is missing stars. So you want everyone to be rank 3. Anyone at 1 star or 2 star, you want to talk to them, execute them, give them a rank up. Happens if there are 3 members. It can happen with the 2 members. You want to leave Gravicius and Chimeria as the last standing member while you're still building relations. While you're not building relations, they fall into the category of adding stars to them. But if you're still building relationships, you want to leave them as the last standing member so that they can get bargain options to build relationships. And then, following that same note, anyone who is not currently connected to Gravicius or Chimeria, who you do want to be connected, the same deal. You want to leave them as last so that they can get bargain options to become connected to Gravicius or Chimeria. This is part of the whole, you don't need to be running people around to all the different safe houses. You just leave the important people last. If you run a fortification encounter, you effectively talk to anyone who is not the fortification member. You can use this for execute to give stars. And then you will be imprisoning the fortification member for, the 7 interrogation, goes to 14, fills the safe house. Technically, you can leave the other people if it does bring other people in. It typically will not, but if it does bring other people in, you can leave them last for bargain options. But just for simplicity's sake, use this to rank people up and then interrogate the fortification member. Transportation. So transportation, Gravicius or Chimeria, if they are missing any stars, are going to be your priority, especially Gravicius. So you want to make sure that they get back up to 3 stars. Anyone else who is in the encounter who is 3 stars, you will imprison for intelligence with the interrogation option. You then, after that, will imprison Chimeria. The reason you do Chimeria after all the other people is because Chimeria will typically be the last member standing at that point, and he can give you a bargain option for a bunch of transportation intelligence. And then, as just like a general rule, never imprison, never interrogate Gravicius. You can release him or you can bargain with him. The reason you do this is because you don't want to run your safe house if your transportation is not rank 3. If your Gravicius in transportation is not rank 3, so doing anything to delay that is suboptimal. I would not recommend it. And lastly, we can talk here about something that some people may not know. Like a kind of minor optimization you can do. You can see here, this is a map. So we've been running City Squares. City Squares is a really small map. It's good for, doing encounters over and over. I have the Syndicate hideout open in the City Square. If you're farming safe houses, you can you'll sometimes have the safe houses fill while you're inside the map. You get a bargain option, or you just have some interrogation that's ticking over. If you have it as the first or second encounter in the map, and there is space, I would talk to June, and I would open up the safe house. So you can see here, if I click while you're talking to June and the safe house fills, you can just click safe house, and she'll open up the portals in the map. The reason you do this, and why the 2255 method is important, is If I were to, so in this case, the transportation fills, Chimeria is my leader, I click Safehouse, I go inside, I do the encounter, get my gravicius loot, get my Chimeria loot, I come back out into the map, and Chimeria will instantly get kicked out, he'll become the lieutenant, gravicius will become leader. This happens because there's only 2 members, it needs the person there. And so when I do the second and the third encounter in this map, I can use those encounters to rank them back up. We're using maps, we're using scarabs, we're using time. These are all resources, they're important. Being able to optimize, get the most out of them is great. So if you do have space, June, like sometimes if she's against the wall, she'll tell you she doesn't have any space. But if you do have the space, open up your transportation safe houses in the map, run them, and then do the rest of the map. We can go back in here. So this is my board, right? And what I can show now is I can do, well, first and foremost, I guess we'll talk about the atlas. So we can talk about the atlas tree. Rip that dude. So there are different betrayal wheels, if you will, right, on the board. And it's pretty straightforward. You're going to take them all. These things are like June mission chance. This is bribery. This makes it so that when you do the options that are like extra maps, extra scarabs, extra currency, you get 200% more items. The bargain options can be good because they also give intelligence. Bargain is just an okay thing. Effective leadership is the Immortal Syndicate members are 100% more likely to be accompanied by their leader. And then you get some additional veiled items. The veiled items are okay early league at this point. They're not like really that relevant. You have pillage and plunder, which is actually kind of, so in the previous leagues it wasn't that relevant, but it's like a little bit more relevant now. This makes it so Syndicate members obtain an additional equipment item when they appear in your maps. They also get increased rarity from defeated Syndicate members in your maps per equipment item they have. This makes it so that they drop more gold. And like, while the gold you're getting from this isn't gonna, you know, knock anyone's socks off or anything, you still get like 1,000, 2,000 gold per member sometimes when it high rolls. Test of loyalty, this is the very important one. This makes it so that when you execute people, they gain an additional rank. It says execute plus 1 rank. This effectively makes it so it says execute plus 2 ranks. Lets them go from 1 to 3. It speeds up the process quite a bit. And then these small passives up here are important. They're Betrayal Syndicate reinforcement chance. They have a 5% increased chance to be accompanied by reinforcements. This means they bring more of the boys for interrogation purposes. Do not click intelligent gathering. You don't want the random intelligence. This will fill your research, your intervention, which is not what you want. Once again, you want to leave them open as much as possible. As far as what you fill in the rest of the board with, you can kind of do whatever. This is a boss rushing strategy. Effectively, we're running city squares. So taking these extra boss map drop chance up here can be good. I have like some scarab stuff. I have the extra map stuff for T17s. I have shrines for running faster. I have significant troves because you're killing a bunch of unique monsters. The Syndicate members are unique monsters. You get some extra scarabs from it. And we're blocking some scarab drops. What I can show now is, so my safe house is ready. We're kind of cheating a little because the fortification is also ready, which means the transportation will show up. What I can do is we can run a transportation, I can get the rewards, and then we can go through some maps and I can explain what I'm doing as we progress to the next transportation. So we'll enter the safe house, quickly zip along, hurt your eyes if you have seizure issues, I suppose. This is a relic of the packs. I'm sure I'll have a build guide for it soon. A fun little skill. It's the Trial Master weapon. So we come here, we go to the safe house. We have infinite AoE, so I'll just kind of spam. Kill the members, talk to him, get a Chimeria's cut, half a scarab, they're kind of nice, I've been collecting them. Do our gravicius, got a horned scarab. And our Chimeria. The reason we're doing Chimeria, or why I have Chimeria, is he gives time-worn uniques, which are league-specific uniques. It's like an old system. The big thing was, early league, I was getting Barracks Respites and Death Rush, and now I'm just kind of hunting for a Headhunter. I don't expect to get one, but, you know, it could happen. So you can see here, we ran the safe house. Our Chimeria is going to be rank 3. Once we open the map, he'll immediately become a lieutenant. He won't stay in the jail because it has to happen. There's not another member. It needs a member. And our objective is going to be Gravicius needs to get to rank 3. The transportation needs to get filled. So we go here, we slap in a map. We have reinforcements, we have intelligence. They're limited to 1. I put 2 in because they can just sit there. It's fine. We open it up. So my first objective is going to be, I need Gravicius to get to rank 3. So we're going to deviate a little bit. I'm going to go after the research encounter first. The reason I go after research, whoops, found the transportation first. Ideally, I would go after the research first, and the reason is I need to get gravicius to 3 before I get the transportation up. That's what I would focus on. In this case, I have Chimera. He showed up by himself. I know that I need to get to 100 intelligence. It's fine for me to spend a little intelligence here. You can see he's the last member in the encounter. He has a bargain option for neutrality. I don't want this. I have my connections. If this was neutrality to Tora or Guff, I would probably take it, but it's not. I'm going to interrogate him. Keep in mind that Chimera has to show up again during the next map. So I'm only going to get 60, not 90 out of this, because it's going to have the second encounter, the third encounter, and then he's going to get kicked out. But that's fine. We can start working towards 100%. Something else that's really nice about doing this, and why it can sometimes be beneficial to go for the transportation first, although I still recommend the research, is that he's currently imprisoned. So if these people drag someone along, it's probably going to be gravicius, but not always. We'll go in here. We'll do the research encounter. Okay, beautiful. Gravicius showed up. Vagan showed up. We get a +1 rank. This is optimal. Boom. Gravicius is rank 3. Now we're in go mode, right? Now all we care about is getting our transportation to 100%. You can see here a bargain option, 70 research. We're in a research encounter. That's why it's giving a research intelligence. We don't want this. Interrogate. We don't want research. So we're just going to click release. It says you will gain no intelligence. There will be no change to the syndicate. Release. Are you sure? Yes. Beautiful. So now we leave. We're going to go hit a mob. This will cause the intervention to show up. There's some rules with intervention and why it shows up sometimes at varying times and why it can be weird to some people. When you're... I'm not going to do that, although that's really good. When you first open a map, there's a timer that begins in the background. It's not when you enter the map. It's like when you actually open the map, there's like a little timer that begins in the background. I think it's 30 seconds. But after that time period, if you start combat with a monster, intervention guys can show up. They'll intervene in the fight, right? Otherwise, if you have done a syndicate encounter, like if you found the transportation in the first 5 seconds, immediately after that, when you enter combat, when you enter a fight with someone, they can show up. That's something to keep in mind when you're trying to make sure your intervention happens after your other events, so that you can use it to gain intelligence. You can see here, remove all rivalries. I don't want this. Intervention intelligence, I don't want this. Just as a note, there's like a little button here that some people may not know about that you can use to like hide the options and see your connections a little better while you're trying to set stuff up early on. But either way, right now we're releasing. Great. I've done my syndicate encounters. We're in City Square. Let's go kill the boss. Try to get some map drops. Fantastic. And we'll pause here for like a second so I can show you the board and all this. So our fortification's still full. That's great. That means transportation is going to show up. Our Chimera is not going to give us this 30 intelligent because he's going to get kicked out. We're going to be at 60. We need one more encounter, one more person to be imprisoned into transportation. My objective when I enter this map is to find the transportation. First and foremost, I want to find the transportation first. That way, during this map, I can gain the intelligence, and after the map, we can run the safe house. So we go inside. What you can do here is you can kind of hug. You can have a spawn right here on this corner. You don't have to go back behind. You can have a spawn back here as well. We see our research is here. That's fine. We'll keep note of that. Our research is in the top right. We'll scurry across the rest of the map. We see our transportation. We go up. We deal with our transportation. Chimera came back. He's only rank 2. That's fine. Oh, he did give the 30. Sometimes he doesn't. Maybe I'm mistaken on that. This is beautiful because we get a bargain option here. This is even better. This is like the ideal situation. So what I'm going to do, I'm specifically going to clear all the mobs around the area. May seem a little like tedious, but do it. I'm going to clear all of the mobs around the area so that there's nothing that can like put me into combat, if you will, after this. I don't know if there's space here, but I'm going to talk to Chimera. I'm going to bargain. It's going to fill the transportation safe house. Our gravicius is rank 3. This is great. I'm going to bargain. I'm going to click safe house. June is going to open the safe house. We're going to run it. So at this point already, you've seen this is our second gravicius. You know, obviously, we started with a full safe house. It's a little cheating, but that's like roughly the rate. And this is with me, you know, sitting down, explaining all the mechanics. It's a very fast process. I think when we were testing it, when we were timing a little bit, I was getting roughly 13 transportation safe houses an hour. And I'm like pushing for it. That's including doing the boss and doing the league mechanic stuff. If you were like a faster character, you could definitely push even higher. That's our Chimeria, gave us nothing. That's our gravicius, we got an Asenath. And now we re-enter this map, and as you can see, we're at 1 of 3 encounters. We know our research is in the top right. We know intervention is going to happen when I enter combat. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to punch a monster. Our guys are going to pop up. Great. Ideally here, you know, you're running these because you want your gravicius and Chimeria to show up so you can rank them back up. But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. They're not always going to show up. You can see here, bargain, drop a scarab. Great. Click it. You see we got 3 because of our notable on the passive tree. I'm going to go across the middle, kill the boss on the way to the research. Get a guardian map. Fantastic. Open a portal outside of the Syndicate library. Laboratory, rather. Go in here, kill the guys. Beautiful. As you can see, we just ran our safe house. Chimeria has shown up again in the same map. We can get him back up to rank 3. Our Grav is rank 3, our Chimeria is rank 3. Now all we care about is getting transportation intelligence, and that's the loop. One real small optimization I can recommend to people here is when you're trying to click through the options. So when you click through options, you need to do release and then okay. It's a little slow, right? I know that Ashling is my leader. I'm aware that Ashling is my leader. I know Hillock are my leader. So in this case, I see that I have a Vagan and I have an Ashling. I know in my head, if I click the Ashling, I can click execute. It's going to say, it's going to do this option like every time. It's not going to give me some bogus option. So it's a one-click button, and then this one's a one-click button. If you talk to Vagan, you can see Vagan was like, hey, I want to become leader. It's a slower process, right? You got to release on him, and then sometimes you have to release on Ashling as well. It's not optimal. But, you know, the map's done. All the monsters are dead. Syndicate's done. And you would just continue that process. You'd go in the next map. You would find the transportation, try to get people to get brought in, build up the intelligence. And yeah, that's Syndicate. That's gravicius farming in a nutshell. I think that's everything. Use these scarabs. Use this passive tree. I guess I'll have like a Poe planner in the details below. And yeah, I don't know. If you have any questions, come drop by, leave YouTube comments, like, subscribe, hit the bell or whatever I'm supposed to say. I don't know, man. I'm new to this stuff. But yeah, I stream on Twitch. You can come ask me questions. I always am willing to help people out. That's Syndicate. It's simple. You can do this to farm other things, like your 2255 method doesn't have to be this. Back in the old days, people used to do 2255 because you would farm like wing scarabs or whatnot, but ambush scarabs are not a bad thing to farm this league with this strategy. But I only care about gravicius. Alright, either way, thanks, appreciate y'all. Hope you enjoyed the video. Seriously, leave any comments if you like think I should have changed something. I do appreciate it. Take care.